The police officer placed a thick brown evidence file on the hospital bed and quietly said, "Mr. Khalid, before you accuse your daughter of lying one more time, perhaps you should explain why your fingerprints are on forged insurance documents." My father froze. My mother dropped the baby blanket she had been pretending to fold. The next 10 minutes destroyed the family they had spent years pretending to protect. Before we begin, dear friends, please help me. Your subscription is very valuable to me. Please subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. 3 weeks earlier, I believed my life had already reached its darkest chapter. My husband, Captain Hamza, had served our country with honor. The military officers who visited our home spoke with quiet dignity. Their polished black shoes reflected the afternoon sunlight as they handed me the folded national flag and expressed their deepest condolences. I heard every word. I remembered none of them. All I could think about was the tiny heartbeat growing inside me. The funeral passed like a dream that refused to end. Friends surrounded me. Neighbors brought food. Cameras from local news channels briefly appeared outside the cemetery before disappearing forever. Everyone promised they would always stand beside me. Most vanished within days. My pregnancy became more difficult after the shock. My blood pressure kept rising. The doctors ordered complete rest. Every hospital visit reminded me that my husband would never hold our child. Every empty chair beside my bed felt heavier than the last. My parents insisted I move back into their house after delivery. They spoke gently. My mother cried every time she hugged me. My father repeated that family was everything. Their concern sounded genuine. I wanted to believe them because grief leaves people desperate for something solid to hold. I did not know they had already begun asking questions about the military compensation package. One evening, while I rested on the living room sofa, I overheard my father speaking softly on the phone. His voice changed the moment he thought nobody could hear. "How much will the insurance release?" A pause. "Nearly $2 million altogether? Plus the pension and the property?" Another pause. "Fine. Prepare every document before she comes home from the hospital." When I entered the room, he smiled so naturally that I questioned my own ears. He asked whether I wanted tea. He kissed my forehead. He told me stress was dangerous for the baby. That was the first moment something inside me became cold instead of broken. I stopped assuming. I started watching. I smiled when expected. I thanked everyone politely. And without telling a single person, I began remembering every strange conversation, every missing paper, and every lie that sounded just a little too rehearsed. My son entered the world just before sunrise. His first cry echoed through the delivery room, cutting through weeks of fear and loneliness. The nurse gently placed him in my arms. He had Hamza's tiny nose and the same deep dimples that appeared whenever he stretched his little face. For the first time since my husband's death, I smiled without forcing it. The happiness lasted less than an hour. My parents arrived carrying flowers, balloons, and dramatic expressions of concern. My mother cried loudly enough for every patient in the hallway to hear. My father embraced the doctors, thanking them repeatedly for saving both my life and the baby's. Anyone watching would have believed they were the most loving parents in the world. Then the visitors left. The performance disappeared instantly. My father closed the hospital room door and spoke in a calm businesslike voice. "You cannot manage all these financial matters alone. Sign a power of attorney. I'll take care of everything until you recover." I looked at the document. It was already prepared. Every signature line had neat yellow markers attached to it. I quietly asked why such an urgent legal document had been drafted before my child was even born. He smiled. "It is only temporary. You trust your own father, don't you?" I answered with another question. "Can I read it first?" His smile faded for barely a second before returning. "Of course. There is nothing to hide." That evening, while he and my mother went to the hospital cafeteria, I photographed every page with my phone. Instead of a temporary authorization, the document granted sweeping financial control over my husband's insurance proceeds, military benefits, investment accounts, and even authority to sell inherited property without my direct approval. My hands became cold. The hospital room suddenly felt much smaller. I immediately emailed every photograph to a private cloud account Hamza had created years earlier for important family records. Then I sent encrypted copies to my personal lawyer, Sarah Malik, without mentioning my suspicions in the subject line. Her reply arrived less than 20 minutes later. Do not sign anything. Lock every account requiring your personal authorization. Call me as soon as possible. The following morning, my father returned carrying fresh fruit and another stack of papers. He pointed exactly where I should sign. I apologized softly. My medication makes it difficult to concentrate. Maybe tomorrow. He forced a laugh. There is no hurry. But there was. He checked his expensive silver watch every few minutes. He kept making brief phone calls outside the room. Each conversation became shorter and more anxious. That afternoon, a military welfare officer named Colonel Farouk arrived to congratulate me on my son's birth. My father's expression tightened the moment he saw the uniform. The colonel handed me an official envelope personally addressed to me. My father reached for it before I could. The colonel gently moved it away. I'm sorry, he said politely. Regulations require that only the legal beneficiary opens this. For the first time, I saw genuine panic flash across my father's face before he quickly hid it behind another practiced smile. Inside the envelope was a formal notification from the Military Benefits Office. It confirmed that every insurance payment, pension installment, and survivor benefit would be deposited only into an account registered solely in my name. The letter also warned beneficiaries to report any attempt at fraud, coercion, or unauthorized legal representation. I noticed my father's eyes moving across every line as I read. His jaw tightened. He knew his original plan had just become much more difficult. That evening, after everyone believed I was asleep, I heard quiet footsteps outside my hospital room. The door opened only a few inches. My mother slipped inside. She looked at my sleeping son for a moment before carefully lifting my handbag from the chair beside the bed. I kept my breathing slow and steady. She searched every pocket. She removed my wallet. She checked every compartment. Then she quietly placed everything back exactly where she had found it. Except she forgot one small detail. The zipper had originally been halfway open. She closed it completely. The next morning she acted as though nothing had happened. I smiled and thanked her for bringing breakfast. Inside, every remaining doubt disappeared. My parents were not protecting me. They were searching for banking information. Later that afternoon, my lawyer, Sarah Malik, arrived disguised as an old university friend carrying flowers and baby clothes. We hugged warmly while my parents watched from across the room. When they stepped outside to answer another phone call, Sarah immediately lowered her voice. I reviewed every document you sent. Her expression became serious. Several signatures appear to have been digitally copied from old property records. If they file these documents, we're looking at forgery, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. I asked the question that had haunted me all night. Can we prove it? She nodded. If they submit even one forged document to a bank or insurance company, they create the evidence themselves. Those words stayed with me. We did not need to accuse anyone. We simply needed to let them believe they were succeeding. Over the next 4 days, I played the role they expected. I acted exhausted. I complained about headaches. I allowed my father to believe I barely understood the paperwork surrounding Hamza's estate. Meanwhile, Sarah quietly contacted the insurance investigators, the military legal department, and the bank's fraud division. Every important phone call was documented. Every suspicious email was preserved. Every attempted transaction triggered silent alerts. Then something unexpected happened. My younger brother, Imran, visited the hospital alone. He looked nervous. He refused to meet my eyes. Finally, he whispered, "Dad transferred money into a new account yesterday. He keeps telling everyone it belongs to you, but the account statements arrive at his office." I asked how he knew. "I accidentally saw the paperwork on his desk." He swallowed hard. "My name is listed as the future owner." The room became completely silent. My parents were not only stealing from me. They planned to place everything under my brother's name, making the money appear like a legitimate family transfer while leaving me with almost nothing except promises and excuses. At that moment, I realized the trap was almost ready. All we had to do was wait for them to walk into it. The investigators advised us to remain completely silent. They explained that exposing the scheme too early could allow my parents to destroy evidence or invent another explanation. Every conversation from that point forward was carefully planned. Every phone call was recorded with proper legal authorization. Every bank inquiry left a digital trail that could later be presented in court. 2 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. Instead of taking me to my apartment, my parents insisted that I recover at their house. I agreed without hesitation. They mistook my calm acceptance for weakness. In reality, I wanted to see exactly how far they were willing to go. My old bedroom had changed. The filing cabinet where I once kept personal documents was empty. My husband's photographs had disappeared from the shelves. Even our framed wedding certificate was missing. When I asked where everything had gone, my mother casually replied, "We packed those things away. Looking at them will only keep you trapped in the past." That evening my father placed another folder on the dining table. "This is only a routine banking update," he said with a reassuring smile. I slowly turned every page. Hidden among harmless forms was a transfer authorization allowing nearly $1,800,000 from my insurance settlement to be moved into a newly established family investment trust. The trustee listed on the document was my father. The successor trustee was my brother. My own name appeared only as a temporary beneficiary with no voting authority. I almost laughed. The greed had become so obvious that they no longer bothered hiding it. Instead of arguing, I signed only the harmless acknowledgement pages and quietly pushed the remaining documents back across the table. "I'll finish these tomorrow." My father looked disappointed but forced another smile. Of course. That same night, the bank's fraud department notified Sarah that someone had attempted to upload forged versions of my signature through an online portal using an internet connection registered to my father's office. The timestamp matched the exact hour he had claimed to be attending evening prayers. The evidence was becoming overwhelming. The following afternoon, Colonel Farouk called me personally. His voice remained calm. "The investigators are ready." He explained that my late husband's father had also been quietly following every development. Despite his own grief, the elderly man had refused to believe I was being treated fairly. Without telling anyone, he had hired an independent forensic document examiner months earlier after noticing inconsistencies in several financial requests. The examiner's report confirmed multiple forged signatures, altered dates, and fabricated authorization letters. Hamza's father had remained silent for one reason. He wanted everyone involved to reveal the full extent of the conspiracy before the arrests were made. As I ended the call, I looked through the living room window. My parents were laughing together over tea. My father proudly told relatives on speakerphone that he had everything under control and that the family fortune would soon be secured. He had no idea that every false document, every dishonest transfer, and every confident lie had already become the very evidence that would destroy everything he had spent his life trying to build. The final piece of the plan fell into place 3 mornings later. My father announced that the insurance company had requested one last verification meeting at the hospital where I had delivered my son. He sounded unusually cheerful. He even suggested we celebrate afterward because, according to him, all the paperwork would finally be complete. I smiled, thanked him for handling everything, and agreed to go. The conference room beside the maternity ward had already been prepared. A long table stood in the center. Several chairs faced each other. My parents entered confidently, carrying 2 leather folders filled with documents. My brother followed behind them, pale and silent. They believed they were attending the final step before gaining complete control of the money. Instead, they were walking into the courtroom they never expected. Colonel Farouk arrived first. Then my lawyer, Sarah Malik. Behind them came 2 insurance investigators. A forensic document examiner placed a sealed evidence box on the table. Finally, Hamza's elderly father entered the room. His face showed grief, but his voice remained steady. He looked directly at my parents. "I trusted you to protect my daughter." Nobody answered. The examiner carefully removed one document after another. Original signatures. Forged signatures. Bank transfer requests. Property authorizations. Power of attorney forms. Each pair was projected onto a large screen. Tiny differences invisible to ordinary eyes became impossible to deny under magnification. The pressure marks were different. The ink dates did not match. Digital layering proved several signatures had been copied from older legal papers. Then the lead investigator produced banking records. The attempted transfers. The newly opened accounts. The internet login history. The IP address. Every transaction pointed back to my father's office. My mother suddenly stood up. "This is all a misunderstanding." The investigator calmly replied, "Then perhaps you can explain why these applications were submitted before your daughter even gave birth." Silence. My father tried another approach. "I was only trying to protect the assets." Sarah slid another document across the table. It was the trust agreement naming my brother as future owner of nearly everything. My father's hands began to shake. Hamza's father slowly opened the final folder. Inside were recorded phone transcripts, certified by investigators, including conversations discussing how I could be convinced to sign papers while recovering from childbirth and emotional trauma. Every excuse disappeared. Every lie collapsed. At that exact moment, the hospital doors opened. 2 uniformed police officers entered with their supervisor. The officer placed a formal arrest warrant on the table. "Mr. Khalid," he said calmly, "you are under investigation for forgery, fraud, attempted theft, identity theft, criminal conspiracy, and submitting false financial documents." My father looked around the room searching for someone to rescue him. Nobody moved. My mother covered her face and began crying. My brother stepped forward with tears in his eyes. "I never wanted any of this," he whispered. "I told them to stop." For the first time in months, I felt no anger. Only peace. Justice had arrived without shouting. Without revenge fueled by rage. The truth had done all the work. The criminal case moved quickly because the evidence was overwhelming. Every forged signature had been verified by independent forensic experts. Every attempted transfer had been preserved by the bank's fraud department. Every recorded conversation matched the timeline created by investigators. Within months, the court ordered all fraudulent documents permanently cancelled, every frozen account restored to my name, and the full insurance settlement, military survivor benefits, and Hamza's property placed under my exclusive legal ownership for myself and my son. My father lost his professional reputation overnight. My mother discovered that tears could no longer erase deliberate choices. Even relatives who had once praised them refused to defend what the evidence clearly proved. My brother publicly apologized to me and chose to cooperate with investigators. I accepted his apology because he had finally chosen honesty, but I also understood that forgiveness did not require rebuilding the relationship. A year later, my son took his first steps across the living room of our new home. Hamza's photograph stood on a quiet wooden shelf beside the folded national flag he had been honored with. Fresh flowers rested there every week. Instead of remembering him with endless grief, I told our son stories about his father's courage, kindness, and unwavering integrity. I rebuilt my life slowly. I completed the professional certification I had postponed during pregnancy. I accepted a leadership position with a respected financial consulting firm, helping families protect their assets from fraud and financial exploitation. Every client reminded me that knowledge is one of the strongest forms of protection. Sometimes people ask whether revenge truly brings peace. I always give the same answer. Blind revenge rarely heals anyone. But truth, patience, lawful action, and undeniable evidence can restore something far more valuable than revenge. They restore dignity. The people who tried to steal my future lost everything they were willing to sacrifice their family for. I kept what mattered most. My integrity. My son. And the promise I made to Hamza that no matter how painful life became, I would never allow fear to decide my future again. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Let me know in the comments what you would have done.